Hello, Democrats, and welcome to Meet the Candidates. I'm Lauren Calmet, Political Director here at the Florida Democratic Party. As you know, we are going to need to turn out Democrats from every corner of the state if we are going to flip Florida blue. Tonight's Meet the Candidates episode is going to highlight candidates running in red counties with blue values. First up, we are going to meet Kaiser Enneking, running for House District 21, and Clint Barras, running for House District 120. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us, Lauren.
Absolutely. Thank you once again for joining us. First off, we're going to meet the daughter of a Gainesville doctor. Kaiser is a graduate of Gainesville High School and grew up regularly visiting the Gulf Coast to fish, crab, and scallop with her family. She and her husband, Mark Scarborough, MD, are lifelong friends and both graduates of the UF College of Medicine. After residency in Texas and a fellowship at Harvard, Kaiser and Mark moved back to Gainesville to start a family and work at the University of Florida, where she has worked as a physician ever since. Kaiser understands the challenges facing all of the communities in District 21, both urban and rural, inspiring her to run for State House to better the lives of all North Central Floridians. So Kaiser, why don't I just kick the first question to you?
Sure.
So this, of course, is the hot topic this cycle. And as a physician, you are uniquely qualified to help the state prepare for the next pandemic. So how can Florida improve healthcare?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, and it kind of hits right into my sweet spot. I have been talking about Medicaid expansion in Florida for the last 4 years. This is something that is beyond overdue. And now with the COVID pandemic, we've seen that when we have health insurance tied to employment, that when people really need help, this is when they're most vulnerable. And so we need to make sure that our number one priority when we get to Tallahassee is that we get Medicaid expanded. But beyond that, in my role in the House, I think we have seen that the last 10 years of cutting our public health departments has really hindered us in trying to deal with this COVID pandemic. We knew this before we ever even got COVID because we were having trouble even managing a hepatitis A outbreak. So we know that the loss of 3,000 public health positions and 20% of their budget over the last 9 years has really seriously handicapped our state. And that would be one of the first things that I would advocate for. Finally, I would say, one of the things that I'm probably most proud of in this campaign has been that I have really been able to serve as a communicator about science things. This is something I do every day. I take science that I know and I have to explain it to patients. And so during this pandemic, I've been able to take all this novel new information that we have and try to explain it to people in a intelligent but non-scary way so that people really understand kind of what we do and we don't know. And because we only have one physician in the House right now, I believe I would sit in a very unique position to help people really understand new science. And science hits lots of areas that the state legislature has to deal with, from agriculture to public health and the environment to I don't know, lots of other things. So I think that background of just being able to help explain science and to be able to look at a paper and understand it, a scientifically written paper, will be a big help. So I think that we need a doctor in the House.
Another doctor, a Democrat doctor in this case. And while we're on the topic of the pandemic, I'd like to ask Clint about this as well. So to introduce him to our viewers, Clint Barras has been a resident of the Keys for 22 years, where he leads a digital marketing agency. Clint is running to put science and people-centered solutions first to tackle the climate emergency and ensure quality, affordable healthcare for all Floridians. So Clint, this question is for you while we're on this topic. Sure. The pandemic has demonstrated the challenges and continued disparities in our healthcare system. So how would you work to make healthcare more affordable for Floridians?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that, Lauren. And like Kaiser too, one of the issues I'm certainly going to be working on is expanding Medicaid. But first, I believe that healthcare is a right. It's not something that should be available to only those who can afford it. Ever since the Affordable Care Act became law, our Republican-led government here in Florida continues to deny billions of dollars every year of federal money to expand our Medicaid program. And by accepting that money, we would be able to bring in another almost 837,000 Floridians with health care. And so Florida's share of that is only 3.6%, or 500 million over 5 years. And 500 million certainly sounds like a lot of money. But also, if you look at some of the cost savings from other cost centers related to healthcare in the state, essentially we would be able to insure more people and then also save money. And then most importantly, I like to put this into a frame of context. At the end of the 2020 legislative session, also at the end of the 2019 legislative session, our governor and legislature gave a tax refund of $543 million to Florida's biggest corporations. So these aren't the normal Main Street mom and pops, the brick and mortar small businesses, which are the economic driver of our economy. These are the large corporations that you'll find are funding their campaigns. And so I believe that everybody in our state should be able to afford healthcare and the medicines that they need to stay healthy. 25% of all diabetics they ration their insulin because they can't afford not to do that. So here in Florida, a carton of insulin would cost $300, and in Canada, you could buy that same carton for $20. And so it's situations like that that just really get me frustrated, in our for-profit healthcare system that we have here. So I support a monthly cap of $100 a month on insulin. I'd like to even shoot for something lower, and then also monthly maximum out-of-pockets for all prescription drugs. But I just think it's really important as a society that we keep our citizenry as healthy as we possibly can. It's going to cost us more if we do not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your vision with us, Clint. And also, as we're talking about COVID, as you had mentioned, it just impacts so many other facets of our life. So, Kaiser, this next question is for you. COVID has reshaped the way that we do education in Florida. So how can we make sure that our kids are not left behind, but still safe?
Well, there's a couple of ways that we could do that. I have to applaud the FEA for their plan that they came up with for safely reopening our schools. It was a fantastic job that they did and had it all together by June. One of the very simple things that they advocated for was to make sure that all the sinks in schools worked and that there was hand sanitizer in every classroom. That just didn't seem like a really big, heavy lift, and yet we haven't managed to do it. There wasn't a dime that was allocated to help our schools prepare to have our kids come back. In this area where I am, we have seen this enormous digital divide, whether it is in our further rural counties or in our kids that just can't afford to have internet at their house. We did an absolute yeoman's job of trying to make sure that every kid had some access, but when there are 4 kids in a household and all of them need to be on to be doing their homework, it's really hard for us to do that. And so, for Florida to really join the rest of the country and the rest of the world in terms of digital access, this should be one of our highest priorities. Not every kid and not every teacher are ready to go back to school for various and sundry reasons. And we need to make sure that those kids are taken care of and attended to because we don't want any kid left behind. And we certainly don't want their zip code to dictate that.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, Kaiser. And I just have to give another shout out to our amazing friends over at the Florida Education Association. They are incredible warriors for our teachers, for our students, and for Floridians. And they've also been very, very great to work with as far as things go for the Florida Democratic Party. They've been incredible in Tallahassee.
Their plan had more science in it than anything that I've seen from the state.
Well, I consider that a very strong endorsement from you for their plan. So speaking of the folks that we've got in Tallahassee, Clint, I'd like to follow up on something that I know that you are passionate about. As a candidate, you've spoken for campaign finance reform. So what do constituents on the trail say about this topic, and what do you plan to do to address this?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that. And this is one of my favorite topics. In fact, this morning I learned that I had earned the endorsement of End Citizens United, which I'm very proud of. I believe that the root of all that is wrong with our government is the way that our campaigns are financed. Candidates and elected officials who are running for re-election can spend upwards of 20, 30 hours a week on the phone soliciting for campaign contributions. And that is just not doing the work of the people. For instance, in 2018, our current Republican incumbent state representative, she raised almost $500,000 and just in her campaign account alone. And her Democratic challenger, raised just over $150,000. And I think that winning elections should not be based on how much money you can rake in, but it should be based on the merits of your positions and your proposals. And there are other countries that basically do democracy a much better than we do. So when I speak with our constituents, we all agree that is the problem and the root of our problem in our politics. That our laws don't reflect the interests of the people, but of the large corporations that keep our elected officials in office. So if elected, I'm going to work to end corporate contributions, set limits on how much can be raised per the office sought, and then also overturn Citizens United at the state level, which already several states have already done.
Thank you, Clint. Yeah, and candidly, we could do a whole show just about campaign finance reform because it is really complicated and there are just so many different things to say on this. But before we move on to our next round of candidates, I do want to make sure that the both of you are able to address an issue that I know is central to both of your campaigns because of where both of your House districts are located. So, Dr. Enneking, I'll take it back over to you. We've heard that House District 21 is home to a number of Florida's freshwater springs. So how do you plan on protecting our springs and the environment?
Actually, it's home to more springs than almost any place else in the whole world, which is a pretty remarkable thing. Almost any candidate for a House district in Florida should have water at the top of their list because we all depend upon it. Unfortunately, the answer that I'm going to give you is like the least sexy answer I could possibly come up with because protecting our springs really has a lot to do with septic tanks, cow manure, and farm runoff. And none of those are really very exciting topics, and yet they are all solvable. We've got new septic tank technology that we should be exploring. We're not going to get every single household in Florida hooked up to a city sewer system. It's just not feasible. It's not possible. And so we really need to be making sure that all our septic tanks have the latest technology and that they're checked on a routine basis. This is something that is important for all of our health and all of our well-being. Cow manures, and not a very sexy topic. I don't think you can put a plug in it to make them not quit emitting methane, but there are things that can be done with cow manure that render it much less polluting. And a lot of this work has been done here at the University of Florida at IFAS. And if we need an institution to support on a statewide level, it is IFAS, because making sure that our dairy practices and our farming practices are absolutely at their best of where we know they should be is a responsibility we all have. And I want to make sure that I'm really clear here that our farmers and our dairymen and women do not work on huge margins. Oftentimes they cannot afford to do these best practices, even though we know that they would help to reduce with runoff. And so it's essential that we fund best practice managements. Last year, they asked for $25 million and got only $4 million. This is just kind of criminal. It doesn't do any of us any good to have environmentalists standing on one side of the river and farmers standing on the other side, yelling at each other about why the river isn't beautiful like it used to be. We need those farmers. We need the food. We need to support agriculture here in Florida, but we need to do it in a smart way. And unfortunately, it's taken us a long time to get here, and it's going to take us a long time to clean this mess up. But it has to be done, and it has to be done in this very unsexy, we got to do a little bit every year. We got to make this happen. And it has to be a priority. And until it's a priority, we're just going to continue to have a problem. And that problem then impacts tourism. It impacts agriculture. It impacts everybody in this state's way of life.
Absolutely. And this is an issue that trickles from even above Alachua all the way down to the Florida Keys.
Absolutely.
So, Clint, I'd love to hear your take on this as well. Because House District 20, which covers all of Monroe County and parts of South Miami-Dade County, is already feeling the effects of sea level rise and the climate emergency. So what is your plan to address this issue?
Thank you, Lauren. But before I get onto the climate emergency, I want to echo what Kaiser was saying. And clean water down here in our district is imperative. For years, the dirty water that you're referring to, Kaiser, has been rolling into Lake Okeechobee and then through the Everglades into Florida Bay and onto our reef. And in the 1970s, our reef had over 40% coral cover. And today we're down to less than 2% or about 2%. And it's steadily declining because there's a lot of stressors on our environment. So I absolutely agree with Kaiser in that septic tanks are a large source of our problem statewide. I would also say that when a house is sold, that we should have a mandatory septic inspection to make sure that that's taken care of. And we've all heard about the stories in Fort Lauderdale and Miami where they're having, their pipes or sewer infrastructure is over 80 years old there. So as sea levels are rising and the water, starts to cover those pipes, they break. And now you're having all of this wastewater just pour right into, the environment. So we definitely need to, it's going to be expensive, like Kaiser said, but we need to invest because in Florida, our environment is our economy. And then so leading that into the climate emergency, because we can no longer call it climate change. It is imperative that we deal with this right now. And the sad fact is that despite all we've learned over the last 20 years about the climate emergency and sea level rise, our leadership in Tallahassee has refused to pass any meaningful measures to reduce our reliance on dirty fossil fuels and transition us to a clean energy future. The impacts of sea level rise are going to be felt most down here. We're the canary in the coal mine, in the Florida Keys and South Miami-Dade. But the effects are going to be profound across all of our society, from climate gentrification, illness related to extreme heat. In fact, just recently here in the Florida Keys, we had somebody that was working out on a roof and they had a heat stroke during the day because it was just so hot. And so we need to have a holistic approach that takes all of this into account with special attention on our low income communities and communities of color, which are usually the first to feel the negative ramifications of our policies. So in the last 2 weeks, I've released a 4-point plan to address our climate emergency. That is on my website, which is clint4florida.com. But it is just imperative that, as Kaiser was saying, I believe in science also. The science is settled. We don't need to discuss that yet. Certain people, like my opponent, thinks that humans don't contribute to the climate change, climate emergency, and that is just extremely dangerous for our district and really for the entire state of Florida. We need to believe in science, and that also transcends into the whole pandemic issue, which Kaiser also mentioned. Being able to have faith in science is so paramount. Again, as Kaiser was saying, across so many different issues that we're going to face in the legislature. And if you don't have a belief in science, then you shouldn't be running for office.
And so much of it is about trust, right? So if you have trust in the information that your public servants are giving, you're going to follow that. If you have public servants that are willing to model appropriate behavior, you're going to have people following. We could have averted this uptick in what we saw had we all started wearing masks in March. And we've had 12,000 deaths here. We've had hospitalizations that are still not zero, I promise. And the lingering effects of this pandemic are it is so distressing to me how much of this could have been averted if we'd had better leadership on a state and national level. It is not the America that I think we all want to be in.
Hear, hear. Yeah, and it's also very concerning too that our state government is not releasing the COVID numbers related to schools. You know, I think that is imperative for the public to know so that we can make informed decisions. Keeping the science and the data away from the public, that's negligent.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your vision for Florida. I know that both of your districts would be better served with each of you in office, and we're really hoping to see you in Tallahassee, assuming that there is an in-person legislative session.
Thank you very much.
But thank you once again for joining us.
Nice to see you, Clint.
It was great.
You too, Kaiser. Thank you.
Next up, we are going to meet another 2 Democratic candidates running this campaign cycle. We're going to be meeting with Danny Fuqua, running for Volusia County Council District 2, as well as Dr. Mark Piancos, running for the Sarasota County Commission District 1. Hello, how are the both of you doing this afternoon?
Hello, great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, a pleasure.
Hi, Lauren. Glad to be here with you. Hi, Danny.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you once again for making the time to chat with us tonight. I'd like to introduce both of these wonderful men to our viewers tonight. Danny Fuqua is a retired Army veteran with 29 years in the United States Army. He is running for Volusia County Council District 2. Mark Piancos, just under him, is running for Sarasota County Commission District 1. He is aiming to make history, as no Democrat has ever held a seat on the Sarasota County Commission in 50 years. So that's 5 decades. So no pressure, Mark, but we are definitely cheering for you.
Thank you.
So, Danny, why don't we take this first question to you? Let's start off with kind of a broad overview of your campaign's vision. So what would be your top 3 priorities if elected, and how would you address those?
Really November. I will focus on the community development, fiscal responsibilities and accountability, and better access for the constituents.
Great, thank you so much. Can you talk a little bit about what steps you've taken to prepare to hold this office?
Yes, I have attended quite a bit of, I have attended the county council meetings, and I've been speaking with the constituents in Volusia County and Daytona Beach area. I've been attending the city commissioner meetings and just doing my own assessment of what the needs are in Volusia County District 2. What are the major concerns that the citizens are having, and some of the things that they would like to see some changes after November.
Excellent, thank you so much. Mark, I've got a similar question for you. Mark, would you share with us why you're running?
Again, thanks, Lauren. You know, my whole career, I'm a retired educator. I started out as a teacher, a school counselor, assistant principal, and school superintendent. And my whole career, my whole life has been working to try to bring people together. Always, especially in schools, always on behalf of young people, but also their parents and my staff, bringing people together. And also, I'm a lifelong Democrat. All through my career, I have been involved with party politics, helping candidates get elected, also serving as county chairs of a couple of counties in a different state, as well as other efforts on behalf of the Democratic Party. Since coming to Sarasota, I'm again very much involved with the community, and I'm also a Joe Biden Democrat delegate to the Democratic National Convention. I was honored to serve as a delegate. Again, I'm very much involved, but why am I running? The reason is really, again, threefold. Number one, the environment. Sarasota County is at a critical time, as is many other places in Florida, but specifically because of the issues having to do with development. There is a cry by many people in Sarasota County about keep the country, meaning try to avoid urban sprawl, to destroy historic areas, keep the country. But in addition, environment also takes into consideration things having to do with wastewater treatment, red tide, air quality, water quality. So those are very, very important. But the other major point is that there needs to be accountability. There doesn't, again, if Republicans have held the county commission for all those years, they don't have to listen to people. They listen to their donors. They listen to the developers. And that's what's contributing to the problems having to do with our environment. So I'm going to fight for everyone in Sarasota County, especially in District 1. And we can win. We can turn that around because people are very concerned about the issues that I just mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. So if I heard you correctly, the Sarasota County Commission is, as it is right now, 100% Republican. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And this is a great conversation that we were having with one of our candidates in a previous episode, Sanjay, who's in Brevard, is that electing even one Democrat to the county commission does change the dynamic. Even if it's just one, it changes the dynamic because sometimes when you've got just too many Republicans in either one branch of government or on a commission or council, it turns into a little bit of a competition of who can out-Republican each other. So even one Democrat can make a huge difference as far as that dynamic goes. And before we go back to Danny, Mark, I'd be curious to hear, so during COVID-19, are you doing anything unique to reach out to voters? Because we know this has completely changed the way that you are able to campaign.
You know, I initially got involved in this race because of an issue having to do with the Republican-controlled commission. They made a decision last year in November to redistrict after a 2018 referendum that was passed by 60% of the people to create single-member districts in Sarasota County. So rather than the county commissioners running at large, they created 5 single commission districts. Well, guess what? The district that I live in, the district that the incumbent lives in, was actually more Democratic. And so last year in November, they voted over the concerns that were expressed by many, many, many people, including myself at commission meetings, saying, don't redistrict. We have the 2020 federal census coming up. That's the true census. They didn't listen. They didn't listen because they didn't have to listen. And the incumbent, my opponent, was in the majority, 3-2, to create a district that is more favorable to Republicans. That was wrong because in addition to that, it disenfranchised a particular community made up of many Black people, as well as a Black candidate, Fred Atkins, who was disenfranchised by that redistricting decision. So I got involved very, I would say, late in the game. I announced my candidacy at the end of March in the midst of basically the COVID lockdown. And in those 5 or 6 weeks, let me just show you, I collected 1,000 candidate petitions. How did I do that? Well, through email, through snail mail, and through people dropping off these petitions to our home. 1,000 petitions. I needed 637, about 900 have been deemed valid. I got on the ballot without having to pay a filing fee. That's one thing that I did, that I had to do during the midst of COVID-19, because you couldn't go out to meetings, couldn't go to door, couldn't do things in a more traditional way. But the second thing that I've now been involved in over the past 3 weeks is that I'm going to each of the precincts. There's 15 precincts in District 1. And I've gone each day for about 3 hours each of these days, doing walk around, sometimes driving around, to try to get a good feel for the district. And what have people told me? They've told me they're concerned about the environment. They're concerned about urban sprawl. They're concerned about not being listened to. And that's going to change. That's going to change November 3rd, because you know something? We're on the right side of history.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we're definitely feeling extremely energized to lead into November, and certainly hoping to see Democrats elected from the top of the ticket all the way down. Right. Danny, I'd like to turn back to you to hear a little bit more about what your vision is for Volusia County. Of course, we know that you're extremely involved in your community. And I'd like to bring up something that we've heard you bring up time and time again on the campaign trail as part of your vision. So Danny, how would you address income inequality and try to solve problems resulting from the income and wealth gaps that exist within your community?
Well, first of all, what I would do is work with entities like Team Volusia and developing job and creation jobs and small businesses just to help stimulate the economy, help get the people back to work, have tried to gain the trust in our county council to make sure that our citizens can trust them and bringing in these jobs, bringing in these small businesses to help sustain the county and as create more jobs, and so the people will have confidence in their future when they know that new jobs coming in, new businesses coming in, and they have an opportunity to go to work full time and not working part time. Mm-hmm. Daytona Beach, Volusia County is a tourist district, and a lot of the citizens here are working part time. They're working 3 jobs sometimes just to make ends meet, just to pay the rent, just to buy groceries. And when we have food drives, those lines are sometimes 500 to 600 cars with families waiting to receive groceries. And we need to come up with a way that these citizens can go to work and work 1 job and go home and spend quality time with their families so that we can instill family values back. And when families are not working 3 and 4 jobs just to make ends meet.
Absolutely. And you bring up one thing that we had heard in the campaign cycle in 2016, which I think it was Gwen Graham used to say about Rick Scott, that he would always say jobs, jobs, jobs. And Gwen would say, well, yeah, you need 3 jobs just to be able to keep things afloat these days. So, I absolutely echo and love that you had brought up, quality jobs. Danny, I'd like to dive into something that you had mentioned. I love Volusia County. It's very beautiful. One of my very best friends is from there. But I'm curious to learn, you had mentioned teaming up with Team Volusia. What is that? And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Team Volusia is a grant that the county have, and they it's a grant available so that small businesses can apply, and also they can improve their jobs, improve small businesses, create jobs, bring jobs into the Volusia County area.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for educating me on that, Dr.
Something, Lauren, if I could just mention something.
Of course.
Hey, Danny, you share my own vision, the things that helped make me successful, I believe, during my career. You mentioned about bringing these groups together, empowering people. That is so critical. That's what that's what I plan to do by having listening sessions, town halls, bringing the various groups together, just like what you're doing in Volusia County. Go for it.
So it's very important that we bring the small groups together, so we can educate the citizen, so we could make sure that other programs are in place, so that small trades. I was talking with a group the other day, and we need to bring back small trades back into the high schools, so that these high school students can learn a trade, air conditioning, repair, or electrician, or plumbing, carpentry. Those are the jobs that they could get right away when they graduate from high school. Everybody's not able to go to college. A lot of people are not don't have the drive to go to college, but we do need to educate our community. So when these big corporations are moving in, 2 years ago, Trader Joe's moved to Daytona Beach. And there was a delay in hiring our local citizens because there wasn't anything in place that had already trained them for warehouse workers. So we need to make sure that we have those small trades already here in place, because Volusia County is forever expanding. Those new jobs are coming to Daytona Beach, to Volusia County, but we got to make sure that our local citizens are ready to go to work when they come in, when those doors open up, when they break ground. That we need to already have our local citizens ready to apply for those jobs, and not having that corporation to move a team of people from other states coming into Daytona Beach. Even when they building these big high-rise buildings here, they're bringing in their crews from out of town. So that money is not staying here in Daytona Beach. People coming in, they're working. Those jobs are not here in Daytona Beach. They're coming in, they work a whole week, then they They drive back home on weekends. So our local citizens, they still don't have the jobs.
Right. And you know, I love to hear so many similarities between both of your visions because, you know, of course, this is the red to blue episode and both of you are in red areas, but we have elected Democrats in these areas. Of course, Mark in Sarasota, we have a longtime friend of the Florida Democratic Party, Margaret Good, who's once again running for office and just did an incredible job in the Florida legislature. And she there were a lot of people who didn't believe that she would have been able to win her House seat in the state legislature. And then she ended up being such a fierce advocate in Tallahassee. And Danny, you know, we are hoping to elect back to Tallahassee, also a friend of the FDP, Patrick Henry, and he has held that seat before. So we are really hoping to get some more of those folks up there. But, you know, both of your current counties are labeled as red, but there are definitely some Democrats there, and they do deserve to have representation.
Go
ahead.
Speaking about Margaret Good, she won in the special election. I voted for her. She ran in the regular election for re-election. I voted for her. And she's going to win the congressional seat, the 16th CD. And also, she's endorsed my campaign. Margaret is good. She's great.
Oh, thank you for sharing that endorsement. I aware it's great to hear that, and she certainly has a wonderful judgment. So that's a strong endorsement to have. Mark, another question, just while we're on this topic of red areas, what do you think that you can, why do you think that you can win and accomplish something that no Democrat has done in 5 decades?
Well, again, I mentioned about those issues that people are very, very concerned about. But as a Democrat, I just want to say this. Think about it. Let's tick them off a little bit here. Child labor laws, women's suffrage, Social Security, Medicare, civil rights, affordable health care. Folks, we are on the right side of history. And with this issue of the environmental concerns with the climate emergency that we have, global warming, we're going to be on the right side of history, making a difference. But I think the key is this, and I like to ask the people who are watching this question: who is your political hero? Mine, Robert F. Kennedy. I've tried to dedicate my life to things that Robert Kennedy was talking about in the early 60s. And unfortunately, he got killed in 1968. He said in 1966, this quote, and I think it encompasses what we're all about, all the things that we're doing, people that are running for office, the people that are helping, the people that will vote. He said in 1966 the following quote, "Few will have the greatness to bend history itself, but each of us can work to change a small portion of events. And in the total of all these acts will be written the history of this generation." Unquote. Folks, let's join together to help write the history of this generation. And I thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes, Danny.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing that.
Yes. Go ahead, Danny.
I would like to mention that Volusia County, as of right now, we only have one Democrat county councilwoman on the seat. And I need to win this election so that we can have 2 at the county. The city of Daytona Beach only have about 3 Democrats on the county at the city commission level. We need Patrick Henry to go back to the state as state representative, so that we could have someone to represent the Democrats in the Volusia County area. So we need to win our state seat back. We need to also win another seat at the Volusia County so that we can make a difference in Volusia County, the I-4, I-95 corridor. So we can also have turned this state blue across the board.
Thank you both, Danny and Mark. Thank you for those inspirational words from the both of you. And Danny, thank you for your service to this country. And thank you to the both of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Danny. Thank you again.
Next up, we are going to meet Laura Novosad for Florida House District 80 and Byron Dickens for Jackson County District 5. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. It's great to see the both of you. For our viewers, I'll do a quick introduction before we dive in to these questions tonight. Laura Novosad is a wife, a mother, and a small business owner. She has lived in District 80 for the last 22 years and is running to bring policy-based decision-making and science-backed data back up to Tallahassee. So thank you, Laura, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
We also have Byron Dickens, a two-time veteran with over 18 years in both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army Reserve. With experience so vast and wide, he is now making an honest effort to serve the great citizens of Jackson County, District 5. Hello, Byron.
Hello. Hello.
So Byron, this first question is going to go to you. Across the Panhandle and the Big Bend, citizens have experienced constant devastation from bigger and stronger storms. As a result, infrastructure has become a top priority for citizens in both urban and rural communities. Is there anything in your platform that addresses this infrastructure for the citizens of Jackson County? And first off, before you dive into that, Byron, I'd like to ask how you and your family are doing, because I know that the Panhandle is going through a lot of pain right now.
Yes, thank you for asking. We're doing fine. We're managing. As a devil dog and a former Marine, we adjust and adapt and overcome. But yes, infrastructure is number one top priority. Is the number one concern of the citizens of Jackson County. Currently, we have over 270 miles of unpaved roads. And that has been something that has been passed the buck by every politician that has ran or either won an elected seat. Once they get in office, this need, this want, this interest seems to change. And it seems like either they lack the gumption or lack the interest in fighting for those issues. So my plan and my strategic plan is to tie in, because it actually is a matter of not just a quality of life and not just building equity for our citizens, but it also ties into small businesses. It also ties into more opportunities. People right now don't deserve what we're getting. And I say we because I've sat here as a citizen of District 5 my entire life and have not understood why we have been suffering so unneedlessly. Right now, a lot of citizens are suffering through the flood of this recent Hurricane Sally, just because ditch management and maintenance has been conducted properly. So accountability is number one. That has been my hashtag since the beginning of my campaign. And infrastructure has been the number one, no matter what side of town or what part of the county I've been going through. That has been the number one for the citizens, and that is the number one which I will fight for. Utilizing those fundings through whether it's state and federal, and whether it's utilizing more of our tourist development to boost our revenue, that is going to be the focus going into my seat once won.
Thank you, Byron, for sharing that with us, and we are definitely thinking of you and your family as the Panhandle is going through this difficult time.
Thank you.
Laura, I'd like to take the next question to you. I know that this is a topic that you've been addressing throughout your campaign. So with many families struggling to pay high rent bills, facing unemployment, and lack of quality healthcare, it seems that the gap between the haves and the have-not is certainly widening. So how can we strengthen families and bring more out of poverty and create a strong and lasting middle class?
Well, one of the big things that we all have to do in Florida to strengthen families is to fix our affordable housing issues. And, today there's many things we can do, but one of the main things they have is the Swardowski Fund here in Florida is a stream that goes right, that has money available for housing and for families today, but money is diverted out of that fund every year. So we need to try to shore up that fund so we can make affordable housing. And this is one of the quickest ways that people can move out of poverty. If they just had the down payment to buy a home, they'd be good. If they just had the money to fix the home they were in, that would help them a great deal. Another thing we need to do is we need to shore up our education system. because having a good education is another way you can move from poverty to middle class. And so we need to make sure that our schools are funded properly and that we put our faith back in public schools, where 96% of our children are schooled. And, you know, my children were products of public school. I'm a product of public school. And education, once again, is a huge, huge ladder out of poverty. And in addition to that, you know, we're here in the middle of COVID, and we have an unemployment system that's supposed to hold people up. But right now it's failing our citizens. And, you know, when I was growing up, we struggled, our family did at different times. And so I know what it's like to raise your family and to try and budget your money on unemployment and food stamps. And so these programs are there to support us, but right now they are, they've made the unemployment system so that it will intimidate the user instead of provide the assistance it needs. So that needs to be fixed. So I wanted to let everyone that I support the programs that support families, and I support closing the gap for families here in Florida.
Thank you, Laura. And I think that you totally hit the nail on the head when you had alluded to just how much COVID-19 has really magnified inequalities that already exist in our communities. So speaking of COVID-19, Byron, this next question is for you. We've seen that coronavirus has made it extremely difficult for small businesses. So what changes would you propose, if any, to support the small businesses of your district in Jackson County?
So small businesses, and especially in my district, are not getting any support. Is pretty much inexistent. So one thing that we want to try to do in back to infrastructure is so multifaceted, and it ties in to the foundational fabric of what needs to happen from the grassroots up. And so what I'm proposing is getting back to rural development. A lot of things tie into providing these resources, because many of the citizens, they have the equity, they have the property, they just don't have the access to the resources to get things going in that area. It's very marketable, and it opens doors for much other opportunities, such as high-speed, free broadband internet, in which we're suffering from on this end as well. But too many businesses are suffering just because they don't have that resource. Many businesses are struggling, they're trying their best, but they can't get the access because ties in together again. And number one strategy is going to be restructuring, restoring, and rebuilding our small business industry in Jackson County.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. While we're on the topic of the pandemic, Laura, I'd like to kick it back to you. What do you think that we can do to help Floridians through this crisis? Well,
you know, we're in a major crisis here in Florida that's not only going to impact everyone's health, but it's also impacting our economy. And the main thing that we really need to do is to bring stability back to everyone by following the CDC guidelines. You know, what we have here is a failure of leadership by the state government to follow CDC guidelines that were laid out clearly by science, people that know the science better than you or I. And we have failed there. We need to put a mandated mask order in. We need to do all these things so that people can to protect people from getting the virus. The science are all saying that if we go to herd immunity, we're going to look at 2 million people dead within a year. I mean, that's just ludicrous. And so the way you fix your economy and get people back to work and protect people is we follow the science and we do what it says. So we wear a mask. It's a simple thing. It's not an invasion of your privacy. There's no laws being broken, but somehow our politicians have made it a taboo, and they've turned this into a political issue instead of protecting the people of Florida. And so, you know, I want to bring back protections to Florida. I want to make our economy strong. And there are other countries in this world, their economies are back up and running. But here in America, they're cutting us off. We can't travel there because we have so much spread here. So we need to get the spread under control. We need to protect families that get COVID by expanding Medicaid here in Florida, which is another huge issue we could do with just the signing of a bill, and bring healthcare to over 800,000 people, which would also help strengthen families. And I think it's the best way to shore up our economy. If we don't get this under control quickly, we're looking at some really serious economic downturns. It's going to be very scary. That's my take on it.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Byron, I'd like to ask you, because I know that this is something we had chatted about offline, that one of the biggest complaints of citizens is that once elected, local politicians become extremely hard to get in contact with or won't give a straight answer on the same requests and concerns promised during the campaign. What would you do differently?
So one of the main issues I wanted to tackle is the lack of utilizing the current technology. One of the things that COVID-19's pandemic has done is kind of force people to utilize social media, utilize YouTube and platforms such as that. But I also want to go further. That oftentimes people complain about the follow-up. So what I want to push is what I call the District 5 listening tour. And that every quarter I'll go and speak to every precinct each quarter and get them to give me their wants and their needs and make sure that I'm on track, because I have 1,000 ideas. I have great plans and great ideas and initiatives that I want to push, but I want to make sure that I'm in line and in focus and line and step with the people and what they want. And so it kind of gives me a guidance, and also it gives me a way that in most settings I can engage with the citizens. Too many times we expect hardworking people to sit up for 3 hours and listen at us conversate during the board meeting, and too many times they run away from it. So I want to increase that accessibility. I want people that understanding that they have kids. Me and my wife have been blessed with 2 sets of twins. So at 6 o'clock, we got a lot of work to do. So I understand, and I want to make more accessibility for the citizens. We also have a local college. Chipola College has a network. They have their own channel. So board meetings, they shouldn't be exclusive. It shouldn't be some type of backdoor deal type of setting, and for people to find out the news after it happens or a day before it's about to ensure.
Can I comment on?
I didn't cut out.
On your words. They're very important. We do have, because we have not been represented properly in Tallahassee. Our representatives don't need to come and speak with us, and don't seem to want to show up at our meetings and our churches and our events. And I think that's very important what you're talking about, Mr. Dixon, because we do need to start working for the people. And you can't get things done working for the people unless you show up where they are and ask them what they need. So I really appreciate that. And that's part of my platform too. And I'm glad you brought it up today.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And, of course, there are a lot of new and big and immediate needs that have come as a result of COVID-19. But some of these needs are not new. Some of these needs are things that Democrats have been talking about for a long time now. So, Laura, I'll ask you about water quality, because I know that this is an important issue in your district. In 2018, Southwest Florida suffered with large green algae blooms and red tide. So your district includes the Caloosahatchee River, parts of Lake Okeechobee. I definitely pronounced that wrong. What was it?
The Caloosahatchee River and the Okeechobee Lake.
Lake Okeechobee and Caloosahatchee River.
Correct.
And so those hold some major players in the debate for Everglades restoration. So, Laura, what is your take on this?
So the Everglades, we've been trying to fix the Everglades for 40 years. Ever since, back when Margie Stoneman Douglas's book came out about the River of Grass, everybody, wants it fixed. We want, the water to flow south of Lake Okeechobee because it's what needs to happen. But we're stuck in a situation where we don't know exactly all the reasons why the lake is polluted. So we need to do the science to make sure that we have all the sources of pollutants coming in there. We need to, right now, the water quality in both these areas has high phosphorus and nitrogen in it. And those are typically farm runoff and, from also septic systems. So we need to make sure that we have lower levels of that. So right now, I think the levels are a bit too high. And I think we need to reevaluate those levels. Also, we have the Army Corps of Engineers manages water throughout South Florida. And one of the issues that they have in there is for fishing. Obviously, we want water quality for fishing and we want water quality for farming. But they forget to put in their guidelines the human health aspects. And when you have blue-green algae and red algae, you have really serious health consequences from toxic fumes that came from that. So we need to protect also the quality of life that we have here, and that includes human health, but that also includes our economy. And so our economy is very tied to our environment, because when you go down Gulf Shore in Naples with all the beautiful high rises and the $1 million condos, and then you walk out to dead fish all over the beach, nobody wants to come here and nobody wants to pay taxes for that. And so we've seen property values went down because of that. And do we want to keep our economy strong? Yes. Do we want tourism dollars still coming in? Yes. So do we need water for everybody to be clean? Yes. So the answer to all that is this is easy. We all want clean water. Even farmers want clean water. But how to fix it, we need to make sure that we do the science that needs to be done so that we can fix it properly and forever have a clean water for everyone, which would be fantastic. I'd love to see the Everglades National Park full of birds again flying overhead. So that's one of my goals.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Laura, for sharing that vision. And as I said, this is not an issue that is new to Democrats. We've been talking about this for a long time. The needs of our communities are growing larger and larger and larger because of coronavirus, but Democrats have been at the forefront of trying to address the existing needs for decades now. So thank you so much for being a champion for the environment, because the way that the environment affects healthcare is only being magnified by coronavirus. And this is all just a cycle that we know that your policy priorities can tackle. So thank you again, Laura, for being a great advocate. And thank you again, Byron Dickens, not only for joining us tonight, but also for your service to our country. It has been an honor to have you with us. Again, one more time for our viewers, this is Laura Novosad for Florida House District 80 and Byron Dickens for Jackson County District 5. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.